Hey guys, we're the Screen Team, and we are all about doing some movie reviews, and we've got an old classic for you. It's an old action classic. I think this movie should be in the Action Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. Which, if there isn't one, there needs to be one. We'll start that up.
We will
More
definitely
on that list.
start that up. The movie we're talking about is True Lies, and of course it stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jamie Lee Curtis, Tom Arnold, also Bill Pullman?
Yes. No, I'm sorry.
No.
Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton. I knew I was going to get it wrong.
Even in death, we still...
I knew I was going to get it wrong.
One of my favorite performances by Bill Paxton, though, in this, by the way. He's such a great, sleazy character.
Used car salesman.
Yeah.
He was awesome in this film.
Yeah.
True Lies. Is this one that, at least for me, it's one that I can watch, over and over again. Is it the same way with you?
Absolutely. I always thought this was one of those underrated gems, and it's hard to imagine why. This was James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger teaming together again.
Yeah.
Not long after Terminator 2, their greatest, I think their best movie, for either guy. And it just, like you said, all-star cast, Jamie Lee Curtis, Tom Arnold. It just really has a lot of heavy hitters. Even Charlton Heston, one of my all-time favorites. Right. I remember seeing behind-the-scenes footage on this, and they're talking about who's a guy that can intimidate, believably, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who can be his boss and actually believably be a force above him, an authoritarian figure. Charlton Heston was the guy.
Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
That's right, man.
Eye patch and all, baby.
That makes good sense. You're going to dislike me for what I'm about to say, but I really don't like James Cameron. Not as a director, more as a person, I guess. I don't know, man.
I'm right there with you. Absolutely. Because Aliens, phenomenal. Terminator 1, phenomenal. Terminator 2, it's hard to get better than that. And I love True Lies.
Everything since Titanic for me is I've
which we have mutual feelings on Titanic. Not to wax poetic on that, but L.A. Confidential should have smoked it in every category at the Oscars, and it didn't. So
highly overrated. I mean, with my bias on James Cameron, he does such a good action film.
He does. Yeah,
and this one is it's really, really top notch. You got this is like the pre Mr. and Mrs. Smith. You've got Arnold Schwarzenegger. He is his wife thinks that he's just like this
computer salesman, mundane. I don't know how they pegged Arnold Schwarzenegger for that role. Like this guy that looks very Greek god-esque in his build. He's gonna be a computer salesman.
And Jamie Lee Curtis is a housewife, and they're both kind of unhappy with their marriage, and things are kind of stale, and same thing each and every day kind of thing, and but he lives this secret life. He's a spy. He's a secret agent kind of thing. And you see a lot of his missions, and you see how he is able to fool his wife to thinking that he is a computer salesman. And
right. Yeah. I guess it's like Clark Kent and Superman. Is that how can Clark Kent believably? Yeah. How do you not know that that's not Superman? But Christopher Reeve always did such a phenomenal job of being this wimpy, mundane kind of character, and then as Superman, he was this Adonis. And Schwarzenegger really nails it. I always thought that Arnold was kind of an underrated actor. Like his accent's so thick it gets in the way, and I understand that. That's the main reason why my wife doesn't like him or his movies. Yeah. But she enjoyed this one more than she would let on. And he was, I think, very great understated role in this movie. Obviously, the action scenes are phenomenal. His the fight choreography is always believable with Arnold. It's always top notch, and he nails those scenes. He was always a good athlete, before he went to Hollywood. So it makes sense why it would translate too. But I think his comedy also is really, really good.
Yeah. And speaking of comedy, Tom Arnold is in this film, and this was a really good role for him. At the time he was, I think, he was getting divorced to Roseanne, so there was a lot of stuff in the tabloids about him and stuff like that. So this one really kind of put him in a new thought process, I guess. People thought of him a little bit differently after this movie.
Yeah, you had mentioned that he was kind of like a sleazy actor. He played those characters really well. Yeah. And in this one, he was kind of like our sleazeball. He was kind of like our dirtbag. He worked for the good guys. He still had a good heart, but he was still kind of, they show some shades of gray with him, throughout the movie.
Yeah. Jamie Lee Curtis, my goodness gracious. We see two different sides of her in this film. And they're good. They are good, man. But with that aside, she did a great job. And one of the coolest scenes in this film is at the very end. There's this action sequence where Arnold is trying to save Jamie Lee Curtis's character, I believe, and they're on that bridge in Miami, or at least where the Keys are,
West,
where Key West is.
Just miles and miles of a bridge over water.
And there's this scene where Jamie Lee Curtis has got to be saved she's driving in a limo, and the limo's getting ready to crash into the ocean, and she's saved by a helicopter, I believe. Mm-hmm. And you see the scene, she's being held, and the camera basically shows that it's not a stunt double. That's really her doing the stunt.
Yeah, mind-blowing.
I mean, it's amazing what she did, and I couldn't do that.
But, she had a good crash course with the Halloween franchise,
yeah,
which she was always excellent in as well. Despite the later movies being pretty awful.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the original.
Yeah.
And, so she was definitely the right casting call to be married with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
All right, so we've been gushing over this film for about 6 minutes now, Matt. Is
Yes.
there any bad things to this film?
I think some of the humor may not hold up as well today, and we had mentioned earlier, is this a film that would get made today? Mm-hmm. If it would, I don't know that it would be a comedy because it might get labeled as Islamophobic or something like that. I don't think that it is. But we just live in a more sensitive, I'd even argue hypersensitive time, especially with issues like that. And I don't know that it would get greenlit for Hollywood today. If it would, it'd have to be like Homeland or American Sniper, where it would be a more serious take on terror in the home front. Mm-hmm. But I think that this one was such a great blend of comedy and action that I'm glad it got made when it was. And this isn't a weak point, but I loved Tia Carrera.
Yeah.
And we didn't mention her earlier, but I always had a crush on her from this movie.
And Wayne's World.
Yeah. La Renard. And Abraham Lincoln. And so seeing her as a not-so-good guy in this movie, if you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil too much, was kind of a bummer even then, and, still is today.
But that tango scene, man.
That tango scene.
Good stuff. Were you ever upset? I'm not really into, I don't want to say I'm not really into sequels, but, sequels.
A franchise.
This, to me, seemed like it could have been a franchise. It could have had many, many sequels. And
a no-brainer, really.
Why do you, what are your thoughts on that?
James Cameron's ego in making Titanic. Again, I can't be unbiased when talking about James. Yeah, I think that's part of what it was. Schwarzenegger also had fallen into a slump in the late '90s, and I think this probably would have pulled him out if they had done this. Yeah. Another movie was Predator. I wanted them to do prequels to that because I loved the cast in that. I thought it was one of the most bad but ensembles of tough guys and military personnel and special ops ever. And, spoiler alert for Predator, they kill them all off. And I was like, that's a movie they could have made another franchise of, or at least a sequel or something. And then True Lies was another one because I loved the cast had such great chemistry. Even, I believe it's Elijah Dushku who plays Arnold's young daughter in the movie.
Yeah, it's the first time I ever saw her was in this film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of Predator, new one comes out 2018.
I'm excited for that.
Be on the lookout for that, man. Yeah. So True Lies, yes?
Absolutely. 100%.
Definitely, for sure. And if there is a Action Hall of Fame, we're putting it in. We're doing it. True Lies. Check it out on DVD. Matt, thank you so much for your insight and for reviewing these films for us, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back next Saturday for another edition of The Screen Team. And remember, we want you to know before you go.